Hello everyone. Yesterday, I found out all the kits for the Sheldon picks. I then quickly went on to Twitch and started rambling about how much I liked or disliked them. This is going to be that again, except it's not going to last an hour. So if you don't think that your time is worthless, let me tell you briefly what I think of all these Sheldon's picks. Just a real quick note, this is footage from yesterday's stream. Anyway, let's start off with the new Squiffer. Sorry, the fresh Squiffer. The fresh Squiffer has Suction Bomb and Inkjet. This is a pretty solid kit. It's a good aggressive kit. The real big problem right now is that no matter how you slice it, the Squiffer isn't a very good weapon. The Squiffer's in this awkward place as compared to the Splat Charger and the E-Leader, where you don't get enough return for the short charge time. So there's not a lot of reason to use it. There's also not really a whole lot of internal synergy in this kit. Even though Suction Bomb is a really good sub and Inkjet is a really good special, there's nothing about this that is great with the Squiffer. The best I can think of is that being able to launch your Inkjet from Squiffer range means that you're going to be launching in a relatively safe place more easily as compared to some of the other Inkjet weapons, but that's really about it. I don't think this is inherently any better than the kit with Point Sensor and Ink Armor or Auto Bomb and Baller. Next up is the permanent ink brush that comes with the Sprinkler and the Ink Armor. The big thing people are excited about is the ability to spam Ink Armor with this weapon. Ink Armor spam has been a pretty tried and true strategy for the past few months. It's the main reason why Kensa Undercover Brella has been so popular, and more recently, why the .96 gal has become very popular. Having another Ink Armor span option is interesting, but I personally don't find the ink brush to be that compelling of a main weapon. Its main feature is its ability to move through enemy ink without having to paint it first, and while that's a really good option for mobility, it also has a lot of drawbacks insofar that you make yourself quite vulnerable by doing it. The main use that I usually see the ink brush used for is getting pushes and clamblets, and there's already a kit with Baller on the ink brush, so it feels like that kit is always going to be the best at pushing in clamblets. That's not to say Ink Armor is bad for clamblets pushes, but I don't think it's ideal. The sort of caveat to this is that if it's a really low charge time to get Ink Armor, like a really low one to get Ink Armor with the ink brush, then if you can spam Ink Armor like upwards of 7 times a match, that might still be worth it, but it still doesn't matter in terms of making the weapon good. It would kind of make the ink brush sort of a dedicated support weapon, which I just don't see it. My initial impression is it's not going to be that impressive. Next is the Soda Slosher, which comes with the Splat Bomb and the Burst Bomb Rush. Burst Bomb Rush is only on one other weapon. It's on the Bamboozler Mark II, and it's not very good on that weapon. The Burst Bomb Rush is maybe the worst bomb rush. It's hard to say if it's Burst Bomb Rush or Curling Bomb Rush is worse. The big problem with Burst Bomb Rush is that while it can be pretty good to catch someone off guard and score a kill, it's not very impactful at pressuring or at taking map control as compared to the other bomb rushes. The biggest problem with it is that if someone notices you doing it, you're really easy to avoid. It's a really easy special weapon to avoid, which is its biggest problem. I think though the Burst Bomb Rush will be better on the Slosher because you don't have a charge time to get a slosh out and you can use it in conjunction more fluidly. I still don't think it's going to be worth really using, especially when the Slosher Deco kit is so good. I don't see it seeing a lot of play, but again, I could be totally off base here. As for the sub, I mean, it's Splat Bomb. It's just really good. The vanilla Slosher kit already has a lethal bomb in Suction Bomb, but it's also saddled with kind of a low impact special in terms of Tentamissiles, so it's nice to have, but it's just not that important. Next up, we have the Bamboozler Mark III. This has been the weapon I've been most excited about, and it's got a really good kit for the weapon. as you may well know, since main power-up is a thing, and since Bamboozler's main power-up effect is damage increase, you can get to 99.9 if you stack, I think, 3.2 slots of main power-up, which means that you almost always get a one-hit kill with a full charge, and this makes the Bamboozler a really powerful weapon. However, it's been held back due to its sort of mediocre kits. The Bamboozler Mark 1 has Tentamissiles, the Bamboozler Mark 2 has Burst Bomb Rush, and both of these, as I just said, are pretty low impact. The sub-weapons that the Bamboozler has are okay to good. I think that the Curling Bomb is especially good on the Bamboozler because it's both a good painting option and a good movement option. The Fizzy Bomb on the Bamboozler Mark III is also a good painting and movement option, and it's probably a better pressure tool than the Curling Bomb, so this to me just feels like a straight upgrade. I guess some people might argue it doesn't come out as fast as the Curling Bomb, but I don't think there should be a lot of situations where you need your sub to come out quickly with a weapon that fights at the range of the Bamboozler. Bubble Blower on the Bamboozler Mark III is going to be excellent. The Bamboozler does a great job of breaking objects quickly. It's good at breaking the Rainmaker shield. It used to be good at breaking Baller and Wall until it got a nerf because it just broke through that stuff too quickly, but it hasn't been nerfed in its ability to break the bubbles. The only problem is that Bamboozler demands you run a lot of main power up for it to be at its best, and Bubbles demand that you run a lot of sub power up for it to be at its best. So unfortunately, this means you're kind of locked in on what kind of gear you have to run with this weapon, and that's a lot less than ideal. I think it'll still be good. Next, we've got the Grim Range Blaster, which has been a weapon everybody's been looking forward to, myself included. So the Grim Range Blaster's big hit is that it has the Burst Bomb, and Burst Bomb on a blaster is a huge deal. Burst Bomb has a tendency to deal chip damage, which synergizes really well with the blaster playstyle. And also having Burst Bomb in conjunction with a blaster means you have a lot more angles of opportunity to attack players with. It's not uncommon for a blaster with Burst Bomb, at least in Splatoon 1, to score through a direct Burst Bomb and an indirect blaster hit, or even two very close indirect blaster hits. And even though this won't be as ubiquitous in Splatoon 2, it'll still be a thing. So in terms of pure offensive playstyle, Grim Range Blaster is going to be really strong. However, it's held back by the fact that it has Tentamissiles. Tentamissiles are low impact, and that's going to be a problem. Now, it's not by any means unplayable. Tentamissiles on a mid-range weapon aren't too bad because you're going to be in positions naturally that benefit launching Tentamissiles. And even though Tentamissiles scarcely get outright kills, they do tend to deal a lot of chip damage, which does synergize well with the other aspects of this kit. So with all the internal synergy happening on the Grim Range Blaster, it will see play, and it will be pretty good. But I don't think it'll ever break out into true overpowered status, because at the end of the day, it's going to be difficult to make meaningful pushes with such a lackluster special weapon. The NZAP 83 looks really good to me. The NZAP is a really flexible weapon. It does well on both the side of slaying and on the side of support. The 83's kit, which is Sprinkler and Inkstorm, obviously leans more on the side of support than slaying. But this is really good. The NZAP itself is already an excellent painting weapon, and adding the Sprinkler to it means it's going to be that much better at painting. Sprinkler is also a really good way to give the enemy an ultimatum. When an enemy sees a Sprinkler, they're going to try and stop it, and even though it's not going to push them out of position like a suction bomb would, it still will force them into a less than ideal situation, which will help the NZAP in scoring a kill or two. Finally, the Inkstorm is just a really solid special. It gives you a lot of pressure and turf for how little you have to do to activate it and use it. So all in all, this is going to be a really good kit, and is going to be a solid choice if you want to take NZAP into a fight. The Aerospray PG is going to be bad. because the arrow spray is irredeemably bad. I'm so sorry. The fact of the matter is that the arrow spray's low accuracy and bad damage output means that there's really no kit that's ever going to make it a good weapon. The kit of the PG is going to be Burst Bomb and Booyah Bomb. Burst Bomb, even though it's a really good special, especially for offense, doesn't synergize in any meaningful way with the arrow spray. The time to kill isn't going to be lessened with the Burst Bomb, and your accuracy isn't mitigated by having the Burst Bomb in any way, so it doesn't make up for the weaknesses of the weapon. Really, the only impact I can see this weapon having is that if it can get Booyah Bomb really fast, and I really have to emphasize, I mean really, really fast, it's not going to see play. If it can squeeze out Booyah Bombs like crazy, maybe people will play it just to spam Booyah Bombs. It might be worth it since Booyah Bombs are so strong right now. But outside of the potential to throw an insane amount of Booyah Bombs a game, there's just really no reason to use this simply because the main weapon is so bad. The Sploosh 7's kit is the Splat Bomb and the Ultra Stamp. Sploosh is kind of at a weird place. It has a really good time to kill but really bad range, which means it plays a lot different from other shooters. It can't really challenge any other weapons because it gets so outranged so easily. Going up against like other shooters is pointless because they'll be able to kite you and there's nothing you can do about it. You really have to play the Sploosh more like an ambush weapon, almost like a roller. But when you do this, it can be really good because you can kill quickly and consistently with it. Now the vanilla Sploosh has the curling bomb, which is a really good tool for it to get where it needs to go quickly, to be able to paint in an ink pattern that it otherwise would never be able to achieve. The lack of this on the Sploosh 7 is going to be a little difficult, but it will make up for it a little bit by being able to use the Splat Bomb to force longer range weapons out of position and giving it some breathing room for its own repositioning to get an advantage. The Ultra Stamp, I think, naturally goes on a frontline weapon like this. Right now, the Ultra Stamp isn't really on a good weapon, so if you want to bring the Ultra Stamp into battle, you don't have a lot of great choices. I don't think the Sploosh 7 necessarily is a great choice in and of itself, but I think it's a better choice than what we've got right now. Right now, I'd say the best Ultra Stamp weapon is the Kensa L3, and that's just not that great. So I think if you can manage to make the ambush playstyle work for you, starting an ambush with an Ultra Stamp and getting where you need to go with it can be a valid way to play this weapon. Next we have Heavy Remix. The Heavy Remix comes with the point sensor and the Booyah Bomb. Right off the bat, point sensor kind of disappointing to see. It's not a very impactful sub. It commonly ranks in the bottom 3 subs in the game. And having it on the Heavy Splatling provides no real synergy. If you can hit someone with a point sensor with the Heavy, you're not in a great spot. I suppose you could improve the synergy by stacking a lot of sub power up, but that doesn't seem like a great use of your gear slots. The special Booyah Bomb is really good, and this brings up an interesting point. So the gold standard among Splatlings is the vanilla Heavy Splatling. It has an amazing kit. It has the Sprinkler, which, as I've said many times, is a really good sub. It's great for painting. It's great for special charging. It forces your opponents to make a choice, and it's just really good. The Stingray is still meta relevant after all these nerfs. The only problem is that the usefulness of a Stingray can be quite map dependent. There are certainly specific map mode combos where Stingray just doesn't perform as good as you'd want it to. Right now, if you want to play heavy splatling, and this is if you're really dedicated to play heavy splatling, because in terms of the splatling family, there's so many choices. There's heavy splatlings, ballpoint splatlings, hydro splatlings. If you wanted to play specifically a heavy splatling on a map that's specifically not great for Stingray, your choice is the Bubble Blower variant, the Deco, which is pretty good. But now you would have the choice to run the Booyah Bomb, which is also a good special, but the problem is now you're saddled with the point sensor, which, as I've said, is really less than ideal. I don't think it's not going to see play, but I think it'll be a little niche. I think it's the sort of thing you will choose if you don't think the Ray is good for a map mode combo, but you're still married to the idea of playing the heavy splatling specifically. Next up is the Cherry H3, which comes with the Splash Wall and the Bubble Blower. The biggest problem with playing the H3 is how little wiggle room there is. If you don't kill an enemy you're challenging in 1 or 2 trigger pulls, you're in a lot of trouble. You can be finished off very quickly. People have mitigated this by stacking a lot of damage up so that you can kill most people in 2 of the 3 droplets during a trigger pull. The other way to mitigate this that is brought about by the Cherry Kit is using the Splash Wall to give yourself some leeway when it comes to your H3 aim. Now if you don't kill the enemy in 1 or 2 trigger pulls, it's not the end of the world. You have the option to keep trying or to retreat. This will be really good, and this will be even better if you prefer to play the H3 in more of a support role than offensive. Instead of stacking a ton of damage up, you can stack things like Ink Efficiency, Quick Respawn, Quick Super Jump, Special Charge Up, Special Power Up, whatever you think is valuable to playing a support H3 playstyle. The Bubble Blower is going to be really good for this support style because Bubble Blower inks really well and it's a very defensive special weapon. It's great with area denial, which is going to go hand in hand. Now, some people might try and hybridize the H3D damage up playstyle with bubbles, which is going to have the same problem as the Bamboozler. It's going to require you to dedicate almost all of your gear towards running main power up and special power up. And as I've said before, it's not great to have to play very specific gear in order to make a weapon viable. Next we have the the Camouflage. The Camouflage Tentabrella, which comes with Ink Mine, gross, and Ultra Stamp. Ink Mine is also one of those really bad, you hate to see it kind of sub-weapons. It's not very useful, and it's even less useful on a weapon like the Tentabrella. Really, Ink Mine is at its best on backline weapons because they can sort of set it in a place where they think they'll get flanked, and then they'll have a warning if someone's coming that way. The Tentabrella is most definitely not a backline weapon because you're going to want to be staying close to your other players and using the shield to aid them in achieving the objective or getting kills. So it's hard to think of good uses for the Ink Mine, and that's a real shame. Now, on the other hand, the Ultra Stamp could be good with the Tentabrella. It's kind of hard to say. Tentabrella plays so much differently to any other weapon in the game that you can imagine scenarios where the Ultra Stamp could be good if you use it correctly, if you're very clever with the positioning of your Tentabrella launch. But honestly, this is just going to come down to having to wait and see how people use it. If there's a good way to use it, people didn't immediately figure out how bubbles and launching the umbrella were very synergistic, so it might take a while for this weapon to see widespread play, or it might just not have any synergy whatsoever and it'll just never be that good, and if you want to use Tentabrella, you're pretty much stuck with the vanilla. You know, taking for granted that the Sorella Tentabrella is complete garbage. Finally, we have the Clear Dapple Dualies. Very excited to see another Dapple Dualies variant. Dapple Dualies are my favorite dualies. They, in case you didn't know, have a really, really good kill time at the cost of having pretty terrible range. They are also a very fast-moving weapon. They have great mobility, one of the best in the game. So their kit is the Torpedo and the Splashdown. Torpedo is wonderful for this weapon. So far, the Dapple Dualies have been saddled with support sub-weapons. Squid Beacon and the Toxic Mist are helpful for your team in a lot of ways. It's really oriented around team play, these two sub-weapons. Which unfortunately doesn't make up for the fact that the Dapple Dualies' biggest problem is getting in range. Finally, having a bomb that will deal damage to your opponent that will force them out of position, this is the tool that the Dapples needed to make up for their range deficiencies. And I think that you'll see a lot of this. It's going to be really good. Sort of the drawback, though, is that Splashdown is a suboptimal special. Now, thankfully, it synergizes a little bit better with these frontline weapons. Splashdown tends to do better with more aggressive weapons because you're already in a good position to attack people with it, barring very obvious times when you would attack with it that you would get shot right out of the air. If you can manage to play smart with it and not get just picked off when you're in a close quarters situation, you can still make the Splashdown work for you. So this is going to be a very aggressive Dapples kit, and it's going to be really fun to play. That concludes the analysis of the kits for the new weapons. In terms of how the meta might shift thanks to this, it really depends on how the meta is going to change from 4.5 to 4.6. Right now, the reigning power in the current meta is mid-ranged shooters. That includes the .96 Gal, the H3, and of course, the big bad daddy himself, the Splattershot Pro. There aren't any mid-range shooters coming out besides the Cherry H3, so that, if the meta doesn't change, is just going to show up no matter what because it's existing as part of the meta immediately. But I think that the Bamboozler Mark III has a good kit and a good main weapon to challenge the current meta. Right now it outranges all of the mid-range shooters, and it's a lot more effective at fighting them than, say, like the Squeezer or the Jet Squelcher. If we predict that the meta is not going to change and that mid-range shooters are going to remain sort of the top of the mountain, then I can say pretty confidently that Bamboozler Mark III is going to be a thing. But anyway, I could be totally wrong. Let me know what you think, if you think I'm off base with any of these predictions, and, you know, if you want me to do more analyses like this, like, comment, subscribe, press the bell, tell me that you love Splatoon in the comments. Tell me that you hate Splatoon in the comments. I don't know. Man, this is call to action. Just do it.